Aphoristic Appendage to On Truthtelling. 1301 to 1350. 1301. A herd of lies, however overwhelming, will eventually give way to the truth that stands head and shoulders above them. Were it not so, we would have perished long ago. 1302. It can always come about that some piece of stupidity upsets and even destroys the most complex, sophisticated, and powerful organization. A sufficiently large rock hurtling through space and hitting this planet would be an example of such obtuseness, albeit at the cosmic level. 1303. There is not a project on Earth, no matter how worthy of endorsement, that isn't subject to being botched by clumsy hands, weakened by corruption, or, if it's built on lofty ideals and expectations, debased by popular demand. 1304. Marxism, along with what is called nowadays cultural Marxism, mixes with morality in a way that, taking advantage of the human all too human at all 4 points of the compass, that is, as diverse longings and aspirations, as desire for power, revenge, security, simplicity, novelty, justice, the greater good, etc., makes it both the anti-scientific pseudoscience and the anti-religious pseudo-religion par excellence. 1305. With less bedazzlement at our own technological achievements, we would realize that nature itself is advanced technology, indeed, hyper-advanced technology, from beginning to end. 1306. He who thinks he can win his argument by insults has more faith in the power of the second than the first. 1307. Public opinion so powerful it influences politicians and policy makers is also the steamroller that flattens even professional opinion, its erstwhile critic and corrector. 1308. Every time we go to sleep at night and dream whatever dreams we do, a remarkable yet little noted thing occurs, namely, the slipping away of the meaning and importance of our wakeful lives, the primary who of what we are, the all-enveloping embrace of logical relations and natural laws. Who can deny that all this gets phantomized every night and, what is more, almost voluptuously and without regret? 1309. When considering the truthfulness of politicians and political pundits in the mainstream media, it would be wise to include two important factors that could very well have a bearing on the matter: power and profit. 1310. If there is any virtue in vice, it must be that the latter is quicker to attract attention than the former, particularly those vices like hypocrisy that are good at parading as virtues. 1311. A. Your distrust of the media coverage of the COVID crisis goes too far. There are experts on the TV every day telling us how serious it is. B. I myself have heard experts on YouTube who also tell us how serious it is, but, mind you, in a much different way and for different reasons. A. YouTube. Why should what you hear there be any more truthful than what is heard on the TV? B. A fair question. Let me explain. I hear experts on YouTube who speak against the current restrictions which they think are doing and will do, for a long time to come, I might add, much more harm than good. They have nothing to gain by speaking out like this and, indeed, quite often a lot to lose. A. Do you think the experts who come on TV and who are in the majority are all liars? That's ridiculous. B. I don't know, and I don't think you know, if they're in the majority. It may only seem like they are. But even if it's true they're in the majority, what is supposed to matter in science are arguments and evidence. Why don't we see these arguments and evidence on TV from the other side so that both sides are given? A. I've heard a few arguments from your side, but, all right, not too much. It's so obvious we have this threat we don't have to hear them. My God, in case you didn't know, almost 1 million people have died from it. B. Almost 1 million people die on this planet every week, with or without COVID. And the people I'm talking about come from every age group in a way that's certainly not the case with this pandemic. A. It's useless to argue with you. You have your opinion, I have mine. I believe what I hear in the mainstream media because everyone couldn't be lying about it. B. I would never claim that everyone is lying about it, but the media has the power to let some voices be heard and shut out others. The issue is so big with such serious consequences in so many different ways and for so many different people that this neglect on the part of the media is, in my opinion, a travesty. 1312. COVID-19 aphorism, fear of the virus. Fear of social disapproval. Fear of heavy fines. My, what a triple whammy the politicians have now in their arsenal. 1313. A. I wouldn't want it on my conscience that, by making my life safer in any way, shape, or form, I was sacrificing the lives of much younger people in any way, shape, or form. B. Oh, come on. Most people don't look at it that way. It's rather everyone pulling together to make the world safe for all of us. A. The vast majority of governments, including related institutions, are run by technocrats who, unfortunately, a sizable number of people think are godlike, if not in the best of times, then in the worst, which is exactly the worst time, the very worst time. To think of them as godlike. B. They mean the best for us, I'm sure. If you say anything else, I'll call you a conspiracy theorist. A. They want the best for all of us and they want the best for themselves. In unprecedented times, the first can be a misguided attempt at social engineering and the second a secure if not greater hold on power. B. I knew it. You are a conspiracy theorist. A. And you, my friend, are a fool for not recognizing that the danger of the times can present itself in more ways than one. 1314. History teaches us that mass stupidity, both political and popular, is making a bad situation worse to the point the only cure for it is catastrophe. 1315. Is it possible for a scholar to show great intellectual depth and insight in one area and be entirely superficial and ignorant in another? Just make him a public figure who is expected to expound on a whole range of issues. 1316. Those who pay their respects to the dead are oftentimes those who only wish to keep the respect of the living. 1317. Truth is highly valued but, when it comes to the telling of it, it's as volatile as it becomes political, which is at least part of the time, and as malleable as sociable, which is most of the time. 1318. Now that science is mixing more and more with politics, it is committing its most egregious error, thinking itself free of error. 1319. COVID-19 aphorism. Nowadays one can observe two modern-day obsessions on almost every street corner, people wearing masks and playing with cell phones and all doing so at the same time. 1320. Overall, she was a good person, but one of her faults was trying to moralize her way out of mediocrity rather than match it, and thereby make herself more attractive, with modesty. 1321. Lying halfway between argument and art, the aphorism is less inclined to try to win over or against another, although this may be lurking in the background. Concomitantly or compensatorily, it may try to win against itself. 1322. Love and hate are both strong emotions having more in common with each other than they have with either interest or indifference. 1323. There is this huge indebtedness that is hardly ever admitted or thought about, namely, the particular or personal identity bequeathed to us by so many both living and dead, great and small. 1324. One of the tricks of the media is to feed on the fringes of where the majority of people have their concerns, making what will ultimately prove to be marginal or transitory, barring a few exceptions, seem of greatest importance. 1325. With the possible exception of the most ruthless dictators, the Achilles heel of virtually all politicians is the gap between what they promise they will do once in power and what they end up doing or not doing, a weakness that will surely be exploited by their adversaries at every turn. 1326. Breaking away from routine by way of leisure, love, or adventure is a grace for many if not all people because it slows down and even makes disappear for a while the ruthless march of time. 1327. Perhaps propaganda of one kind or another is necessary in human affairs if for no other reason than being the most effective short-term way to counter the worst of it. 1328. In the immediate present, we have this intense feeling that there is a great divide between real life and make-believe or fiction. But wait a few years and, with the work of memory, this chasm will close and, in some instances, be no more than a thin or blurry line. 1329. The intellectual life of the majority of people in the modern world doesn't extend much further than the TV set. 1330. Celebrity status makes smart people stupid when they forget their ignorance in a bid to flaunt their knowledge. 1331. Many issues considered to be of utmost importance today will vanish tomorrow like snow on a summer's day, more forgotten than resolved. 1332. The art of politics is telling the truth as much as it is an advantage to do so, and, of course, the better one is at this, the greater the political rewards. Telling a lie only when not doing so would be politically damaging or even disastrous, and, finally, maneuvering between these two extremes the many times that avoiding a firm commitment, keeping an ally, or deceiving an enemy is the main objective. 1333. The fiat currency of the moral world are those words that keep their value for a time even after having abandoned the gold standard of humane and honorable conduct. 1334. It is possible that, for a nation, a government, an institution, an enterprise, a group of people, an individual, some method of operation or way of functioning is so profitable that, despite its showing every sign of eventually falling apart with disastrous consequences, it is held to with as much desperate energy and hopeful hopelessness as a drowning man floundering in an open sea and seeing his salvation in a scrap of wood. 1335. Criticizing somebody or something without understanding or even attempting to understand is as common as dirt. 1336. Where great power is in play and huge sums of money are at stake, evil has a garden from which to produce its most poisonous plant. The tempting, sweet-tasting fruit of this monstrosity, at least for a goodly number of people, and, oh, how subtly it sets its trap for them, is hearing it said from supposedly reliable and authoritative sources that all who are willing to tend this garden and see it prosper are good and all who don't, all who may even harm it in some way by their contrary words and actions, their criticism and lack of cooperation, evil. 1337. We have as our language a vast book of words and expressions in our heads unjustifiably discounted or devalued every time we think we have a poor memory. 1338. When a politician lies but smiles, the average person sees the smile but not the lie. When he lies with a serious look on his face, he sees not a mask falsifying things but one so well-fitting it must be a true reflection of them. 1339. If one has any doubts that, despite their grandiose plans for saving the planet, politicians haven't really put this at the top of their agenda, one should ask oneself why it is that, after more than 70 years, it's still bristling with nuclear weapons. 1340. Politics becomes tragedy not to mention cruelty, injustice, and inhumaneness when the thinking becomes, crush or be crushed. 1341. Politics is a double-edged sword easily swinging between beneficence and barbarism. 1342. If the majority of people didn't feel so little drama in their lives, the media would soon be out of business. 1343. Thank God for every new generation that, even though it can be easily indoctrinated, still tends to put personal experience, certainly not an answer to all things but definitely an antidote to some, above everything else. 1343. The media no longer speaks truth to power but only the truth that power wishes to be spoken. Such is the tendency, at any rate, and, as far as maintaining a free society goes, it doesn't bode well. 1344. When it comes to looking after oneself and managing one's life from day to day, an area of expertise is in evidence that, whether this life be considered ruined, rich, or run-of-the-mill, is both common and unique, common as a development for everyone and unique as one person's. 1345. COVID-19 aphorism. My thought is this: all started with political and medical mistakes being made which quickly got out of control and have grown so large and complex that leaders now cannot change direction without damaging their personal, professional, or political lives. They have no choice, in other words, but to double down, institute a culture of worry and concern, not to mention fear, expand the parameters of social responsibility, and, finally, do everything in their power to discredit those who are unwilling to cooperate. 1346. COVID-19 aphorism. The real virus afflicting society today is the fear which surrounds the pandemic and operates on a number of levels, cutting across society from top to bottom. 1347. COVID-19 aphorism. Could it be that, many years from now, the politicians of today, in their dealing with the problems related to the coronavirus, will be likened to the firefighter who, after starting a blaze, rushes back onto the scene later to take credit for putting it out? 1348. COVID-19 aphorism. The immense harm the media is doing nowadays can be summed up by two principles. The first is that a little knowledge is a dangerous thing, and the second that the first not only applies to many different subjects but also to hundreds of millions if not billions of people. 1349. Misinformation at the popular level or anywhere else is a bad thing, but the misleading or untruthful statements of those in authority can be 10, 100, 1,000, indeed, 1,000,000 times worse. 1350. To those who load their talk with abusive language and non sequiturs, one could respond, "And why don't you throw in the kitchen sink?" It would fit in perfectly with the rest of your argument.